Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of MTG Arena. Today is December 25th, Christmas Day, as far as I know. I think that's right. uh, Probably got some other things I want to work on today, so we're going to just try and rush through this pretty quickly, so it's not even goof around. The packs here are not any new packs. There's a Wednesday brawl, which, like, if I was to do the brawl, that wouldn't do anything, so it's just stick with this. Although I am a little tired of playing black, so I've been playing a lot of black and white. Let's try a little blue. I don't think I've played much blue lately. Not that I'm going to win anymore. Unfortunately, I'm just not in a position right now where pretty much anything I do is a major increase on my odds of actually winning. I've spent most of the night chasing the dragon, as it were, programming, and just as I was about to start, I've found one of the problems. I'm trying to program it, my conference room digital signage, digital sign, to understand HTTP 300 errors, which anything that starts with 300 is some kind of redirect, temporary or permanent. 301 is probably the most common you would ever encounter, and you probably wouldn't ever actually encounter it unless you're a pretty hardcore server admin or in some other way just very astute as far as you're traveling around the internet. Basically, it is a simple short message from the server going, hey, this file is no longer in this place, it's in this new place. Since my conference room sign has to connect to, well, a couple of things. It has to connect to, first and foremost, a clock, otherwise it really cannot connect to, let's see, what are we trying to do here? I don't even know what my cards do. This is just a bunch of drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing functions. So yeah, it has to connect to a clock, a N2P server. That works fairly well, although it does sometimes take a little slower than it should. And I think that is more around the network time protocol more than even my device. I have thought about maybe just turning up the CPU processor on it, but I'm not sure that really needs to happen. Let's see. Artifact you control. So this brings artifacts out of my graveyard. Interesting. But yeah, it also has to connect to a calendar, and so if the calendar, particularly in my case, it pushes it through a HTTP connection into the more modern HTTPS connection, and tells you, hey, you have to go with a secure connection, you have to go this direction. That's what I figured I'd spend some extra time working on, although perhaps in all fairness, a lot of this programming does come up to, hey, do you want to waste your time on it, or do you want to just make a device that's less robust? Because it would be really easier for me to have saved myself probably 12 hours of programming to say, you know what, you just gotta have a secure connection, which is not gonna support it. And inherently that is the thing with all IT stuff, is that you can't just start cutting corners and going, you know what, we don't really need to give options to people, because options don't really matter. What does this do? This one taps. I could put this on the field right now, and then whenever I cast a blue spell, it would tap his stuff. Although I'm not sure that that's really necessary. So yeah, ideally you wouldn't want it to go the other way and have a link to an HTTPS ICAO file. I'm also potentially having trouble with the buffer. There may just not be enough room for the entirety of the file. There may be some other systems at play there that I'll have to work within to make sure I get all of the file. Scry and draw 3 cards. Can I do this? Right. So let's go ahead and put that down. And then, yeah, that looks good. Not gonna attack here. And then I'm going to have to discard this, which seems like it's a bad idea, but it actually isn't too bad of an idea, because I can put this on the field and bring this back. And in fact, I can do that for a lot of things if I can get it on the field. Alright, this. And then, yeah, I think this is just kind of a mess of a deck that I was mostly goofing around on. Top 4 cards of my library into the graveyard. Whole land. Just do no attacks there. As far as tweets going out and such, there's not a lot happening. Of course, it's being Christmas, and there's not a lot that's probably going to happen for the rest of the week. I probably will decide to spend a few more dollars on the Christmas Steam sale, and that's pretty much that. This would be a fine day for people to gift me games, friend me on Steam and give me games or gift cards as a Christmas bonus, but yeah, unlikely to happen. Let's see, so put this back on the field, I guess. And then put this. And then play this. And do this. And do that. Why is this guy not really doing anything? I don't know. Seems like he should. They are going a little weird on the Steam checklist of things. In fact, there is a thing I wanted to do at some point, and I'll probably just do it after a stream, come to think of it, because it would just be too disruptive. They want you to get into a voice chat with a friend and a voice chat with a group, and it's just like that's really pushing it, frankly. That's asking a lot. So we're gonna tap this guy, and then we're gonna play this, and then we're going to go ahead and just put this on the field. Target non-permanent, non-land permanent as hex anyways. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can do, so attack. So this guy, Gadrick the Wizened, it's not too bad. See, he's an artifact, so can I bring him back with this ability? That's an interesting question. So, yeah, I can already see the beginning of the end as far as this stream goes, and like, while today would be theoretically, I guess, a decent time to do a Steam wishlist cleanup and spend a lot of extra time if I was, frankly, I have other Christmas plans of little that I do have, and I'm also in that precarious position where I'm probably gonna fall asleep right when everybody wants me to be awake. So yeah, let's just wrap up this stream about as fast as we can. Here we go. Here's where you win instead of lose. And here's how you deck yourself this way. Okay. X number of cards.
This is all just an illusion.
So what are the other two abilities? Top two cards, and then draw. So Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, will potentially let me win by running out of cards.
Let's think this through.
Let's see. So I want 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think I can do 4. I can do 3. And that gets me down to 21 cards. And see, now I just want to kind of do no attacks. Oh wait, but while we're at it, let's put that back on the field. Actually, that wasn't how that works. So that's not going to get me anywhere. But we can get back there. Meanwhile, we have a game on Steam called Summoner VR, which looks like a low-effort VR, stand in one place, attack things, kind of maybe a RPG trying to be done in VR. It's $9.99, English only. Yep. There is quite a lot more adult games than I would have thought. It's actually quite surprising how many adult games there actually are that show up when I'm watching the doing the Steam thing. What is it called? Steam Discovery Queue? Yep.
No.
Yep. Okay. So we want to do this and let's see, do we have enough here? Let's see. Let's start with this. Let's play this. I'm down to 15.
How you play the hand of fate.
Let's see. We've got discard cards. So we can just discard a bunch of mana. 11. I think we can probably do 11 in the next turn if he can't kill me somehow. Because, yeah. And this somewhat synergizes, but doesn't heavily synergize with it. Alright. 6, 7, 8, 9. That leaves me with either him giving up or me actually milling myself to a victory, which is a funny way to win, certainly. Perhaps a little bit too slow of a way to win. And let's face it, that's just the beginnings of a strategy there. I'm gonna have to think it a lot through more to decide if I'm gonna do anything else there. Alright, let's see. What are we even trying to do in this deck? I don't even know. Sorry, someone texted me and I'm trying to respond and now I'm being really quiet. Not that there's anything I can really do because it's the other person's turn. done with that. Busy day. I can already tell it's gonna be a busy day. So yeah, let's wrap up as quickly as possible here. We have a game called Drone Racing. Now, what's funny about drone racing is that there's been a couple drone racing games that I put on the follow list, and this one looks like it might be the best looking one so far. It's $8.39. Doesn't seem to require VR, even though it's called Drone Racing VR. Seems like it might actually have like 6 maps, 36 tracks. That's pretty good. Single player with online player versus player, English, Japanese, and Chinese, and language support. And see, it does say down here PC and VR play, so I don't have to be concerned with that. So I'll put this on the follow list. We'll see if it gets some reviews. There is enough desire in my mind and heart to want to play one drone racing game, for better or worse. Alright. This adds a blue or red. It can be sacrificed to draw more cards. But it seems like most of the other things I have are like, this is a red deck, so almost certainly it would be an aggro deck trying to cast spells. So it's very strange to have so few creatures. Let's see, this. I guess we do red. And then this again, and I guess we do red again. Gamatsu has an article here. Puzzle and Dragons Gold English trailer is now available. What's kind of interesting here is that Puzzle and Dragons, I would have assumed, would have been a puzzle game. So this is a very high action trailer that's being shown. This is, I guess, a Nintendo Switch version of the Puzzle and Dragons match game, which doesn't look bad. Doesn't look bad. Puzzle and Dragons would be my recommendation for kids, certainly. Meanwhile, my opposite recommendation for not for kids, Destiny Child, is doing some major improvements for Christmas, so I'll probably be playing a lot of that later on today also. I cannot even read what this says. Whenever attacks, you may cast target instant or sorcery with converted mana cost then equal to his alchemist power from your graveyard without paying the mana cost. Like, alchemist power? I don't know what that would be. But I think what this does, if I was to guess, is I think this would let me cast this next turn. It's questionable, certainly, how many match 3 games are really worth playing these days. Like, you really should just play like one and then move on. That would be my guess. Alright, +1/+1 games double strike until the end of the turn. Okay. I could also sacrifice that to draw 2 cards, which probably wouldn't be a terrible thought. Next, attack. So now I can play this and do this, And then this on top of that. And there's a nice double strike. And I believe next turn I could probably use double strike and the other spell and play him again. The Epic Store is still giving away games every day. Today was Celeste, or yesterday was Celeste, and that's kind of shocking because I already own Celeste on the Epic Store, which pretty much means that they've run out of games to give out. Like they're giving out things that they'd already given away before, which I think is a pretty solid argument to say that the Epic Store has failed at this point. Speaking of kind of failing, Giant Bombs, their Deliberation 1 and 2, the first two that I've listened to have been particularly dry. It seems like they're not really arguing any points, for better or for worse. And maybe that'll get into the last 3 days of deliberation, or the last day of deliberation, I'm not sure. But they are really just going through the top 100 games that they have listed that came out this year, which is just a really a long waste of time, frankly, and it's not caught my attention at all. I kind of say this every year, but every year it becomes a little bit more true that I've just lost interest in listening to Giant Bomb, either the Beastcast or the Bombcast. I would say their weekly podcast would be more interesting if they had news, but they kind of don't really even have any news that I'm not just getting somewhere else. So it's a weird position to be in. Yeah, okay, so I can't cast a spell, so I'm going to pass. And then I'm just going to block this. Yeah. Game of Sutra has an article here. Every major older version of Dead Cells is now preserved and playable on Steam. Now I'm hoping he does that through the versions tab and not by re-releasing every single version. Although you could also do it through the DLC tab and people wouldn't really be too upset with it either. Frankly, it's not even probably too hard to do it by simply changing a settings file and then having a launcher launch the version you chose. This sucks. I don't think I've got this here. I can attack, but if I do, I lose. If I don't attack, nothing happens, so. So just gotta have to sit there. Does put you in kind of a weird position. I, at some point, would be willing to play Dead Cells, but I certainly would not be willing to play an older major version or minor version. I would just play the most recent version like I do any other game and say this is the experience that you're going to have as of this recording. Yeah, so I don't know if there's particularly a lot of value in. Oh man, I could have tapped this guy. Totally could have. But I didn't. Yeah, that's not gonna work though. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Get a job. Moon Studios is hiring a remote senior game designer. This is a remote location. Apparently they're the creators of Ori and the Blind Forest. Aren't they also owned by Microsoft? Their next game is an action RPG, ARPG. I always have to remind myself A stands for action and not Asian, since JRPGs stand for Japanese RPGs. So not a big jump there that they would move over from making 2 Ori games to an action RPG. Alright, so if I tap this guy like I should have, this ley line would have killed me anyways. Man, I gotta get some ley line cards. They clearly are major factors. Gamma Sutra has an article here. The Witcher 3 sees jump in Steam players after the debut of the Witcher Netflix show, which is cool. It was more than twice the peak of 19,240 concurrent recorded last Monday at 49,795 players. So yeah, a lot of people inspired to go back and play some Witcher. I could have seen myself being one of those persons if I had The Witcher on Steam and just wasn't distracting myself doing other things. Like, although personally, see, now I'm in a completely different position with this deck. Personally, I'd be a little upset going back to play The Witcher, not having ever purchased or played the Blood and Wine DLC. That would be the major thing I would want to get. That would be what I would want to get when to go back to Witcher 3. And frankly, probably by the time I get Blood and Wine, I have a decent chance of then being in a position where I could go and play Witcher 4. If that ever comes out, which almost certainly it has to come out in some way or other. Cyberpunk will come out, and then they either need to move on to a new IP, or that they've got to go back to their Witcher roots, and I think they've got to go back to their Witcher roots. It would be the only smart move, just in case Cyberpunk isn't the biggest thing ever, which sure, people think it will be the biggest thing ever, but that doesn't inherently mean it will be. Let's see. I'm ruining my strategy here. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Snowball, a first-person shooter, which clearly is just a low-effort asset flip game, first-person shooter, with some indication that you'd be throwing snowballs as an Eskimo. It's $1.59, English only. Yeah. Just nothing there. Next we have Cthulhu Saves Christmas, which is either the 4th or 5th game in the Cthulhu series, or a re-release of just the same game over and over again. Because I've definitely seen Cthulhu games before that look like these little RPGs. There's Cthulhu Saves the World. And I guess I can't just directly ascribe it. This Indivisible would still be a game I'd love to play. Can't really describe Cthulhu Saves Christmas as just a troll game, because it seems like it is a comedic joke game that does have at least a decent amount of polish on it, and doesn't look like it is a RPG Maker asset flip, of which I'm kind of happy to announce that We really have not seen any RPG Maker games in quite a while. Let's see. Well, that would make it a 4-4. So I'll pretty generously put Cthulhu Saves Christmas on the follow list. It's part of a bigger question, certainly, though, whether I want to play the Cthulhu RPG series or not. I think not. Probably would be. Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't. It's if you're gonna go into a deep dive of an RPG game, you probably should have something more to it than that. Alright, here we go. Now we got it. Next, we have a game on Steam here called IOX, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter. Looks like it suffers from dark screenshot syndrome, and it just doesn't seem like it's zoomed in very much at all. Which, being zoomed out in a top-down twin-stick shooter might be the right way to play that kind of game, but otherwise it just looks uninteresting. It's free, so the price is right. English only. Bad name, I would say. IOX. Let's see. Seems like TechRaptor has decided to merge their 10 listicles of the top 10 games for each year into one giant listicle of the 100 games of the 2100s. Or perhaps what they did is they did ever so slightly a different perspective there. I don't see how you would really get much of a difference. It would really show how flippant lists of the best games would be if you thought that the top 10 games of 2001, for example, somehow should be in a different order when compared to all the other games that came out in the 2000s. So at the best case scenario, if you're being consistent, you're just going to take 10 lists and find where you squish those 10 lists together. I don't even have an artifact to destroy. However, that is way too long of a list to really mention or be bothered with, so I'm not going to go any further there. All of these lists, frankly, not super helpful, particularly this year. The fact that their Giant Bomb is going through 100 games is just craziness. And yeah, I do have suspect that they might just end on the third day and go, actually, we've decided not to give any order or awards or anything. We just are going to talk about the games going forward and do a really passive thing, which would be kind of pointless. It would be like the Nostalgia Critics review of the Pink Floyd's The Wall, in which he really didn't review it. Each player sacrifices a creature. moving on, TechCraft has an article here. The Paynes Creek killings slayed me. An excellent detective game with only a few heart attacks, it says. Looks to me like it's a horror game of some polish. Says, I have to say the Paynes Creek killings are a truly great game and fantastic experience. The story and world will draw on a seasoned detective to throw them for several loops. Despite a myriad of questions, almost all of them get answered if that player can put together the right clues and make sense of the dark past of Paynes Creek. With other detective games on the way, EQ Studios have established an excellent foundation for what they can do in a mystery game. Yeah, I'm sorry here. I'm slowing down gameplay, and it's not even really throwing up the burn rope. Traditionally, Christmas tends to be the day that a lot of denial of service attacks are done just to irritate people, particularly in the video game world. On the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if Christmas is also just a high traffic day in general, and people blame DDoSs that don't actually exist because their servers aren't beefed up enough. Sacrifice a character. A creature. It's gonna do this every time. Am I actually gonna win here? TechCraft has an article. Stardew Valley 1.4 updates add a convenience and charm to adds convenience and charm to an already great game. Okay. I don't think there's much more reason for me to continue to say people that like Stardew Valley seem like they're getting their money's worth, because they certainly are. Oh, darn it. Are getting pretty consistent updates. So I had to not block so I could sacrifice that creature. So then I can do this. So that I can do something like this. And almost certainly he's still gonna win. Like, he's got four damage he can do right now, and I would need to be able to do a lot more. And certainly my aggro deck is not really saving me here. So now I have no choice, so it's gonna discard, sacrifice my main creature. So if I could have just gotten him down a little bit more, I could have won there, dealing 6 damage. But I didn't, so I lost. Next we have a game on Steam here called Pulse Stereo, which looks like it's kind of a, I wouldn't call it a direct Flappy Bird clone, but a flying, hovering game that probably is a nightmare to control. It kind of reminds me of Sonic Spinball, but with terrible controls. Seems like you explode on contact with the walls. It's 99 cents. English only. Yeah, not anything that would interest me. Let's see. And I guess it's time to stop goofing around and just go back to our actual winning deck. Next we have a game on Steam here called Ancient Guardian, which this is a game that's already on my follow list, I believe, because I looked at it through the discovery queue. And it's $5.59, bunch of languages. It kind of looks like it might actually be an adventure game if the images want to actually load, which they don't seem like they actually do. Like, there's a lot of polish in that animation there. This looks different. This looks different. There's definitely some inconsistency in the screenshots, but it is mostly positive. It's tagged as a horror action adventure game, and this definitely looks different too. So, yeah, it deserves to be on the following list, at least for the moment, and then I'll have to give it some more thought. I can kind of tell it's going to be a difficult calling next time I do the follow list cleanup. I'm going to have to be in a particularly picky mood, which I just have to, I'm going to have to say, forget it. No more of these games. And in particular, with my decreased effort and my decreased output in the past couple of months after basically October and the Halloween month, I could certainly see more justification to just kind of lock it down, focus more on the AAA games, focus more on the games I already have. I've got more than enough games to play, even if I do get kind of forced into playing a bunch of things that that I'm not super interested in playing. Like the Fear series is kind of a great example of that. I played Fear 1. If I got forced to play Fear 2 and Fear 3 and just kind of grind through that, or do spotlights on it because I have less interest than a normal person who would have purchased Fear should have. There's certainly some that wouldn't be a big problem. I would still have hundreds upon hundreds of other games. Or if I just got forced into quickly spotlighting every single little game that is really old and that I probably won't have much to say about it, that'd be fine too. At a certain point, my Steam library is running right up against my estimated lifespan as far as how much free time I'm going to have. And this year also, I have to fully admit, I've been particularly bad about distracting myself working on my server to get that actually working, even though right now it's not working because there's one hard drive in that RAID array that's bad, and it's slowing down the process of trying to replace that one hard drive. What color is this? Why did I get a buff? Token creature spirit. I would have thought that would have been a black card, but apparently it's a white card. Or it's a color, it's every color card. Yeah, that's weird. Feels like that's not working the way it should be. Moving on, Open Critic has an article here. Pokemon Go's Christmas event has kicked off. I would kind of really question why Pokemon Go in particular would have a Christmas event and how they think that's really going to work. If you just think of it logically, Pokemon Go is a game where you are spending your effort walking around. You can't really do that if it's really cold and snowing outside, or that frankly it's not even particularly safe to be walking around during the Christmas holidays because of just more drunk drivers and more people on the road in unfamiliar areas. There's just a constant amount of there's 4 or 5 good reasons why holiday times are the worst time to be walking around on the road, near streets, far away from the street, in a park a quarter of a mile from a road. Still may not. I'm certainly falling back also on just playing Magic. Like, here it is a Wednesday and we still need 3 more victories, so you can tell that this starts on Monday, and in the past 3 days I have not only gotten 12 victories, and that may just become the new standard. Certainly too, it may just be a pain. Let's see, Gamba Sutra has an article here. Get a job, PlayStation is hiring a character rigging supervisor in San Diego, California. So it does seem like they are making a game that will have humans or animals in it. 3D rigs of humans and animals, which isn't anything that should be surprising, for sure. At the very least, even if Sony PlayStation, Sony Entertainment Interactive was secretly planning on shutting down, they would still hire people and pretend like they're doing fine up until the last second. You've heard the stories lots of times where people are hired and even moved to the new location for a new job to only find out that the entire office has been shut down a week before they was supposed to start. Moving on, we have a game here called Unicorn Tales. Unfortunately, this is just a little too asset flippy. A girl-targeted game where you play as unicorns, or even a guy-targeted game where you play as unicorns, is slightly interesting, but yeah, the fact that they have platforming and everything here just looks like an asset flip is kind of ridiculous. Although it does bring up an interesting idea. If you were to play a game like Shadow of the Colossus or The Witcher, but there were no humans around and you were a horse or a unicorn and you were in just kind of these ruins looking around, that might be an interesting way to tell a story, but it'd probably get boring pretty fast. You could be a walking simulator game easily. Play any kind of walking simulator as a animal. That being said, there was a game that came out this year that was quickly forgotten, where you were playing as a ape and maybe the ape eventually evolved into a human, but it's uncertain if it even did get that far. Unicorn Tales is $9.99, full audio English, it claims. It's just not polished enough, unfortunately, and that's a problem with a lot of girl-targeted games, or games that look like they're girl-targeted, is that they are seemingly very consistently low quality. Man, I really feel like I'm stuttering a lot. I probably am. Come to think of it, this is a lack of sleep. Let's move on. We have a game here on Steam called Dungeon Dreams Female Protagonist. Now what's funny about this, and I think this is probably a joke, is that you see some female protagonist and then immediately there's just a bunch of guys that pop up to cover up all the female protagonist games. So anyways, this is an RPG Maker garbage game. It's $7.69 discounted English only. But yeah, seems like they're either trolling straight up or they are definitely joking. Tech Raptor has an article here. Is Warhammer Underworlds Online a faithful recreation? Spoiler, yes it is. Okay, good for them. I looked at Tabletop Simulator. It kind of looks like Tabletop Simulator actually is a simulator. So I don't know how quick and easy it would be to play any specific game. I've only kind of seen other people go in that direction and play with their friends, and when you're playing with your friends, of course, then there's more room for taking a little bit more time to simulate things. Whereas if I was going to play Uno, which I did buy Uno and I do want to play it fairly quickly, honestly, the last thing I'd want to do is try to use something like a simulator to try to simulate playing Uno. No attacks this turn. I don't understand why his card would destroy artifacts for each permanent destroyed this way. The controller gains 3 green centaur tokens. Okay, so I had 2 artifacts that were destroyed, and that's why I got centaur tokens. Okay. Alright. So, what do we want to bring back? I want to take one of those. Then, do we want this or this? I'll take that. And then, no attack. Yeah, Warhammer Underworlds Online, being an online game, would immediately fall off my interest list. Yeah, the music has got some weird whispering in the background to make it sound like you're hearing voices. Why does this guy can't block? It did something to my guy, so it can't block. Oh, fine. If you want to play that way, do that and do that. Okay. This. And what have we got here? We've got 2. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Afterburn Democropolis, which I think is a troll game somewhat around Bernie Sanders and Democrats fighting each other. Yeah. $3.99 English, full audio allegedly. I think at this point, as silly as it's gonna sound, there is an argument to be made that Valve might want to put their foot down and not allow political speech in video games, or blatant troll, at least blatant troll political speech games. Alright, do we have enough to win here? Yes, we do. So, let's just do it. Because certainly a game like this, it doesn't need to exist on Steam Storefront. Like, this is not the kind of game that would ever end up on the shelves of a GameStop or a Walmart. And you can kind of curate your experience that way. And if you're a supporter of Bernie Sanders, buying this game doesn't help it one bit. It just means you have less money that could actually be donated to his actual political campaign. If you're not a supporter of Bernie Sanders, buying this game doesn't help anyway, because you could be giving that same money to whoever you do want to support. So meanwhile, the only people that are helped by a game like that are the trolls that effectively made the game. Moving on, we have a game here on Steam called Sea King, which looks like it is a more zoomed out pirate fighting player versus player game. Looks like it might even have a decent number of mini games. They're calling it a combat party game, kind of like Mario Party, $4.49. Let's see, English, full audio, a bunch of other languages. It doesn't seem like they have too many though, because they didn't bother to put into their description that they had like several different mini games. Seems like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 is probably the maximum. They'd probably get boring pretty fast. This feels just kind of low effort as far as the description in both places. And for that reason alone, I'm not going to bother to put it on the list. They just kind of failed to sell their own product. It would have been a lot nicer had they tried a little bit harder. Speaking of trying hard, here's a game on Steam called Let's Learn Japanese Vocabulary, which looks like you're dragging and dropping words in English letters, written Japanese words in English letters, with some other mini games. This is the kind of bad game you might give to a 4 or 5-year-old and let them play with, and not be too upset if they didn't learn anything correctly. But in the end, I guess if you really wanted your kid to learn Japanese, or you personally wanted to learn Japanese, you would need somebody in your life, or you would need to be the person in someone else's life that nearly fluently understands, speaks, reads, and writes the language. I just consistently don't think video games are the right way to learn Japanese, or any other language for that matter. And it's always Japanese. Like, there's probably 7 learn Japanese games that came out on Steam, while there was almost certainly 0 Spanish or Italian or French games, or frankly any other language at all. And yeah, if you want to learn those things, you need a teacher. You need someone who can listen to how you're pronouncing things and correct you when you mispronounce it or make mistakes, so you're not just reinforcing the same mistakes over and over again, or learning the wrong things. Study cards and such help somewhat after you're already in a class learning through an actual curriculum. On the other hand, it might be that these Learn Japanese games are actually targeted to Japanese children themselves, since they have to learn Japanese and are somewhat heavily tested on their understanding of the language. Let me make sure this next article is YouTube friendly. Yep, it is. Komatsu has an article here. Root Film launches April 23rd, 2020 in Japan. This is the sequel to the Root Letter game series, I think. I think it is. Let's see. Yeah. I do think I bought some more interesting games. I think I got the non-retitles, so Zero Time Dilemma and that series. That had been a series that had been particularly expensive, so I think I spent some extra cash getting that. I got, I think, Snake Pass. I can't even remember what I bought, but it was closer to 5 games that were closer to $20 for $100 than it was the way I've been shopping in the previous years, where it was 100 games closer to $1. I've kind of had my fill of that, and it's not like I'm planning on making even more content in 2020. So, although that strategy still is as valid as it ever was, so it does. If my strategy of flooding Steam with game coverage was ever going to work, I should just keep on doing it forever. Flood the internet until there's no way that people can avoid me. We'll see how well that works, though. In practicality, it hasn't worked too well. It got me as far as a couple, slightly over 100 subscribers. I haven't even looked to see how many subscribers I've had in like 3 or 4 months. It just has not been a priority. So if I suddenly had realized I had 200, 300 subscribers, that'd be great, but I think you need 1,000. Yeah. So, and I think it would be really weird. Wow, that's a lot of gold. It would be really weird if it turned out I just crossed that threshold and had 1,000 subscribers and didn't even realize it. Next we have a game on Steam called The Alchemist House, which looks like a very creepy horror game that definitely has some polish to it. So this doesn't just look like a low effort horror game, although in all fairness some of these screenshots do look like a low effort horror game, but then some of the video seems to imply something very different. This is one of those games where it's going to be very helpful to see the reviews on it. This game is also free, so it must be rather short. 30 minutes to an hour, English full audio. So The Alchemist House might be a great game to dip your toe into playing gory, horrific games, because you're not going to invest any money, nor you're going to invest a lot of time. Although there's still a large majority of people that just don't ever want to play gory, horrific games or engage in gory, horrific content at all. Next we have a game on Steam called Card Princess, which looks like a RPG where it is just the cards actually fighting each other. They didn't even do 3D models, which this screams low effort Chinese game. $3.59 with a bunch of languages. The idea, the artwork here is not bad. It's just you would not want to stare at that in the movement. And I could almost see this being placeholders, like somebody programmed a game and had been paid to program a game, and then they lost their artists, so they couldn't do the 3D models and do the fighting animations and couldn't do the background art. But this feels more like an asset flip game because the background art does not look anywhere as good as the Card Princess art itself does. So, yeah. I imagine it's probably just a low effort game. Next we have on Steam Drift Masters, which is another game that looks like it's a low effort game, because you can see even in this demo you're quickly changing from a square city block to a grass section, and there's just a overall lack of polish on everything they're showing. Seems like there's 2 to 3 different kinds of cars. A lot of things in the wrong place too. Like the speedometer clearly should be down below here, and this should be clearly down over here. Maybe vice versa. There's a back button at all times for no reason. They went $2.54 for this game. It's English only, and yeah, that's just not gonna happen. We have about 10 more tabs open, and that's about it. Gamatsu has an article here. A new Cotton title is due out in 2021. Cotton being a shoot 'em up series that was popular in Japan, I guess. This is definitely an announcement for an announcement for an announcement as far as the way the Japanese announce things. Death Touch, not yet. Let's do this. And this. And then attack. OpenCritic has an article here. There are 2 new Pokemon games on Facebook. So if you want to play games on Facebook, you can play Pokemon Battle Tower and Pokemon Medallion Battle. I don't know why you'd want to play games on Facebook though. Like the whole, what was that farming game that was on Facebook that a lot of people liked about 5 years ago? Like that was like the last time I think anybody really had anything to say about any of the games that Facebook offered, and it really is a great example in retrospect of Facebook desperately trying to get more people onto their platforms without really having much to offer to entice people, and not really focusing too much on trying to have these platforms grow and be amazingly good products. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Dotokoi. Looks like it's a low effort asset flip Chinese visual novel, would be my guess. There's little pixel graphics and then just like unexplainable blocks. English is not supported, free to play, Chinese only. Yep, that's what I figured. Do I want to attack here? I mean, I can. Or I can wait. I really didn't curate the games that came out today, so we have Jamestown Courier Frog MD, which is an asset flip of Google Map images and a 3D frog. So this is an interesting like programming experiment. Somebody was able to take the Google Map images, which I don't think you can do, and build an environment around it. Although maybe it's not really Google Map images, and maybe it's just the way things are being depicted. It makes it look like it's that. And you're just playing as a frog, which doesn't make any sense. It's 59 cents discounted, English only. See, the only thing I can imagine is this is a reference to the old Looney Tunes cartoon where there was a frog that could sing and dance, but only let one guy ever see that he could sing and dance, and he was driving the guy crazy. But while I would be interested in like a modern 3D kind of highly polished Looney Tunes product, I don't see why Warner Brothers, which I think owns Looney Tunes, would bother to make such a product. I mean, they've got, if it is Warner Brothers in particular, they've got good reason actually to make one, because they could balance it out with the Lego game series. By making non-Lego games, the Looney Tunes, they could balance it out with the Batman series. It would make sense, but they probably run the numbers and just know it wouldn't sell well enough, and it would just be this nostalgia trip for people who are frankly too old and unlikely to actually buy Looney Tune based games. And frankly, it would have to do a lot more than just be the singing frog, of which I can't even remember the name of. It would have to be Bugs Bunny and the Tasmanian Devil and Wile E. Coyote and all of them. And I still don't know what a game would be around that. If anything, if I was going to be super nostalgic for that, I would just go back and watch the old cartoons. Which would be fine. Next, Gamatsu has an article. Sword Art Online, Alicization, Lycoris, Alice and Asuna's first encounter, and Yugo's restraint scenes. So, I believe this might be Asuna from the other Sword Art Online series, but she looks different. Her hair, I think, is a little bit redder in all the other things, or at least her outfit tends to have red in it. And then this is the main bad guy in this Sword Art Online season side thing, this bad girl who in the anime is like naked throughout the entire final fight, which would be somewhat difficult to show, I suppose, in a video game. Let me just skip and see what this actually shows in the trailer. It's one of these really, really long presentations, like an hour and 30-minute long presentation. But they barely show any animation, and they're mostly just talking to the screen. It's funny how it seems like it's not worth the money for Japanese companies to even bother to do a real presentation, and instead they just have two of the programmers sitting at a table talking to a camera, and yet there's plenty of money somehow to fund the entirety of the development of the game. Although maybe it really isn't too much to actually develop a game these days. Well, I think that's gonna be it for today, so let's just cover the last bits of news. Gematsu has an article here. Shadow Corridor is now available for the PS4 in Japan. This looks like a horror game. It includes the additional features of the Switch version, which were not in the PC version. Well, that sucks. So there is a Steam page here. The Shadow Corridor, I believe. Yeah, this was the one that looked slightly well animated and was very well received. But it kind of sucks that it's $8, and now I'm aware that there's content missing from the PC version. But whatever, that is on my wish list, but I probably should clean up my wish list and remove it. It's probably not good enough. Next, we have a game on Steam called Knights of the Temple Infernal Crusade, which is from Starbreeze Studios. Which Starbreeze Studios, is that the bad guy, one of the bad guys that has a bunch of controversies, or is that a different company? This came out in 2004, so this is a re-release of an old game. They also have the John Woo Chronicles, which are mixed reviewed. Although I would argue maybe the John Woo Chronicles have some reason, some relevancy to actually be played. But let's see, requires a VR headset to play. Oh, this is the John Wick Chronicles, not the John Woo Chronicles. I misread that. There is a John Woo game also. Alright, well, I'll put it on the follow list because there might be some relevancy to this old game that I don't recognize, but probably not. Next, we have a game on Steam called History Racers 2, which looks like it's a troll joke game. I kind of like the animation style, but I hate the gameplay thing. Like, running around in a infinite runner, it's just not that interesting. $2.99, English and Spanish, Latin America. 24 levels in challenger mode, 6 cup mode, single race mode. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any kind of multiplayer besides split screen. Yeah, if you had these characters and they were doing something a little bit more, if they were playing a Mario Party game, that's probably the best way to make a competitor to a Mario Party game. Take a bunch of completely uncopyrightable famous celebrities, famous historical entities, and have them play some silly game against each other. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Drinks with Abby, which looks like it is a dating sim visual novel. It has a very like oil painting look to it, I would say. It's kind of consistent in its artwork, but it's very zoomed out and just kind of boring looking. It's free to play, so I guess you get what you pay for. 9 achievements, English only. Doesn't look terrible, doesn't look amazing, and when it comes to visual novels, quality really is going to have to be key. Next we have a game called Monster Capture King, which clearly is just a low effort RPG game, although it seems like it's grayscale, so it might be trying to also look kind of like a Game Boy game, but honestly it just looks like somebody went into MS Paint and drew something in black and white. This is $2.79, English only. And I have to admit, as someone who went into MS Paint and basically drew something just a couple of weeks ago, I can do better, frankly, just by putting more time and effort into it. And this is from someone who's totally not a artist at all and has no artistic skill. Next, we have a game in Steam called Darkness and Flame, The Enemy in Reflection, which this is one of those hidden object games that that always has these little animations that catch your eye, and then the rest of the game is complete stills. It's funny that they make those little 5-minute animations, or less than 5-minute animations, and then that work never gets compiled into anything bigger or better. Maybe it's because the wire rigging of it or the movement of it gets used in some other place where it doesn't get recognized as being copy and pasted. 5bin Games, I believe, charges a little bit less for their hidden object games. Yeah, $6.99. Full audio in English, bunch of other languages supported, but it is still just a hidden object game, and that's still kind of not where I'm at. I guess if I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel, I'd get back to playing some visual novels. It wouldn't be too bad of a thing to get back to, but I'm trying to avoid it for better and more interesting games and more interactive games. Next, Gematsu has an article, Little Busters Converted Edition, which is an interesting title for an edition, is coming to the Switch in spring of 2020 in Japan. It's a key visual novel getting a Switch port with the English text option. I've heard of Little Busters, but I can't remember anything about it. Little Busters Converted Edition first launched for the PS2 in December of 2009, so it's like a 10-year-old game, so it must be fairly popular. And then it has a Steam version that came out in 2017, so we really are at the point where things are just getting re-released 10 years later to PC. Yeah, Little Busters on Steam is on my wish list, so I've considered it before. I think it's a baseball team, if I was to guess. It's from the minds behind Angel Beats and Clonade, so it has a prestige to it. It's rated very positively. Yep, and that looks like a baseball team. There's an anime called Princess Nine, where it's a female baseball team that's pretty decent, although arguably a little long to watch all the episodes. But also it's pretty old, so that would have been pretty standard back then. Next, Gematsu has an article, Metal Max Xeno Reborn launches March 26, 2020 in Japan. This looks not good for this one screenshot. Yeah, that does not look good. I'll just leave it at that, and then that's gonna be. And then last game we have that came out between Monday and now, we have a game called Hotaru, which is just a shoot 'em up game of some sort. That'd be about the best way to describe it. It's 1% off for 98 cents. English full audio, it claims. That's, of course, not interesting. And so then that will bring me to the Humble Bundle store, which the odds of there being any Humble Bundle coming out on Christmas Day is pretty ridiculous. And then I could bring me back to my Twitter feed, and let's see, there's a game called Igor, Aigor, Escape from Bishop, which looks like a low effort asset flip game, collection of mini games. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't think Twitter's actually working right now, come to think of it, because we've been streaming for like an hour, and I guess it's just that the person has been giving away um, giving away codes constantly. But the Screen 7 is giving away codes for the game Lorelei, which is the third game in the Cat Lady series. I like that game, but the codes they give are missing letters, and they're not giving any kind of hints or ways of figuring out what the letters are that are missing, the letters and numbers. So it seems like it would just be a straight up guessing game, and it's not worth my time to do that. And let's see what else, if there's anything else worth mentioning. Lots of people saying Merry Christmas, and yeah, that's about it. Let's see, is this safe for YouTube? One game came out, and this is probably a great example of a game trying to come out under the radar. We have a game here on Steam called Good Doctor, which is just like hideous animation. Now, I wouldn't hate a game where you play as a doctor and run a sim like that, but man, do these graphics look terrible? Does this interface look like it's from some kind of tablet or cell phone idea? It's just horrible. It's tag nudity, probably trying to sell on that. Although, looking at these images of these women, I would not want to see them naked particularly. $6.29, way too expensive. English only. Like, by far, this is one of the worst games I've seen allowed on Steam in at least 3 or 4 months. Alright, though, that's going to be it for the stream. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you want or choose to celebrate. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, because that helps me with YouTube, theoretically. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon. Or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list, or gift me a game you'd like to see me cover. The Steam winter sale is still going on, so now would be a great time to do that. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.